The first shipments of the approved Pfizer vaccine now making their way across the country, coming as the U.S. expected to hit an unimaginable 300,000 deaths today, and another major league team changing its name. Here's what you need to know. Good morning, this is Cheddar's Need2Know podcast for Monday, December 14th. I'm Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Hey, Carlo.
Hey, morning, Wags. How was your weekend?
It was good. You know, the warm or relatively warm weather made a big difference, I think, just to be able to be outside. How about you?
Yeah, my phone said it was 60 yesterday in Brooklyn. Probably the last time we'll see 60 degrees for a while here. So that felt nice.
It did. All right, let's get to some good news here. The first doses of Pfizer's coronavirus vaccine fanning out across the country after the FDA gave the green light Friday night. So cargo planes and trucks taking the first shipments of nearly 3 million doses from Pfizer's facility in Michigan to distribution sites in all 50 states. The first shots are expected to be given to healthcare workers as early as today. Meanwhile, President Trump says that a plan to inoculate White House staffers has actually been delayed, and it came after the New York Times reported last night that West Wing employees were told they would be among the first to get vaccinated at the same time as frontline workers.
Yeah, that got a lot of people, I think, upset for good reason. First of all, it's a little bit weird because I'm pretty sure most of those people have, you know, some immunity, since almost everybody in the West Wing, like, literally has had the coronavirus at this point. But I mean, on the other hand, I guess it's like, you know, it is the seat of power in the country. So I guess you could argue like they should be among the first in line to get it. I'm not really sure, but anyway,
that is the argument, the continuity of government.
Right. So I guess I see that. Anyway, it is. Look, I don't think that should take away. This is huge news, Jill. This is huge news. This vaccine is out. We're going to see pictures of people getting shots today. I'm almost sure of it. That's fantastic. I do want to dispute a couple of the conspiracy theories that have been floating out there because I've sort of started to see these materialize online. One thing that the FDA put out with this emergency authorization on Friday night, they put out the list of the ingredients for this, the Pfizer shot. It's sort of like what you would see on the side of a cereal box, right? Only it, you know, instead of like sugar and carbohydrates, there's a lot of other stuff that you probably don't understand. But basically, what's in this thing is mRNA is the active ingredient. There's a bunch of lipids, sodium and potassium chloride, and sucrose. There are no cells from aborted male fetuses. That may sound like a ridiculous thing to say, but that is one of the conspiracy theories that is out there. So I just want to get that on the record. And I think that we can't say this in the media enough. Like, it is in no one's interest for these vaccines to be unsafe or ineffective. So if you have hesitations, which I can understand given the pace of this, just remember, nobody wants this thing to succeed more than, you know, the corporate board of Pfizer, for instance.
There is some questions now, some ethical questions actually, in terms of distribution. One of the debates that's going on is whether or not, so just say you had 20 million initial doses, whether you give that to 10 million people and then save that additional 10 million for the booster shot that you need in 3 weeks.
Right.
Or do you just rush it out, give it to 20 million, and kind of worry about the booster shot and the supply of it for you know, the booster 3 weeks later?
Right.
So this is something that is being debated in current circles right now. Okay, so that incredible vaccine news, though, giving us a little bit of hope amid an otherwise bleak picture. The U.S. on the cusp of 300,000 coronavirus deaths, according to the Johns Hopkins tally. About 1 in 1,000 Americans have died of the virus this year. It's all but inevitable that the country will surpass the number of U.S. fatalities from World War II before the pandemic ends, as public health officials do not see hospitalizations or deaths peaking, actually, for at least another few weeks. Carlo, we're now seeing that Thanksgiving surge start to accelerate as expected. About 109,000 people are in the hospital in this country with COVID-19 as of yesterday, which is a new single-day record.
Yeah, for the record, the U.S. Deaths in World War II, the total is 405,000. So we're about 105,000 away. And sadly, I think that in almost every scenario. We hit that probably by March, which is really unimaginable. I do want to point out what they're doing in Germany this weekend. I thought this was pretty interesting. Angela Merkel putting the entire country into a quote unquote hard lockdown for the Christmas holiday that's going to last at least until January 10th. They're closing most stores, schools. They're banning singing in church, fireworks for New Year's banned. Outdoor sale of alcohol banned. This is a pretty strict lockdown, among the strictest we've seen probably since the spring in Europe. But notably, businesses in Germany are being given $14 billion in relief aid to get through these next few weeks. So that is, not happening here, but an interesting thing that they're doing over there.
Speaking of politics, members of the Electoral College will meet in their respective states today to officially cast votes for president and vice president. The meeting, which is usually just a formality, comes after the Supreme Court on Friday refused to hear a case brought by allies of President Trump that asked the court to overturn the vote in several swing states that Trump lost. On Saturday, supporters and opponents of President Trump clashed in the streets of D.C. At least 4 people were stabbed, 33 arrested. In one video going viral on social media, supporters of the president, apparently members of the Proud Boys, took a BLM banner from outside of one of the oldest black churches in the city and burned it, and that is being investigated as a possible hate crime, according to police.
This case, the Supreme Court case on Friday, I was thinking about it all weekend because I'm a loser, I guess. But it's just, there's nothing else to do.
Carlo.
No, I just feel like I don't know how to cover this story. I mean, it's important to remember that it's not just like some insignificant cohort of people that are still doing this, right? It's not just like some like hardcore Trump supporters who are like, look, he won, the election was a fraud or whatever. In the same way that there were some hardcore Democrats in 2016 who thought that the 2016 election was illegitimate. We're talking about 40% of state attorneys general and a significant chunk of elected Republicans literally asking the highest court in the land to just straight up invalidate millions of votes. They didn't do that. I mean, they said they had no standing, which we all expected. But I don't know. Does that make it not unbelievable that this even happened? I mean, if you just imagine if President Trump squeaked out a victory, and New York and California came together and said they were going to file a amicus brief with the Supreme Court asking for them to overturn the results in states like Ohio, Florida, or Texas, where the president won, Republicans would be up in arms about that, understandably so. And this is actually happening on the other side, and we're supposed to sort of just be like, oh, yeah, well, they're just sort of humoring President Trump. To me, that is just really indicative of, like, I don't know, like a real moral rot that really needs to be looked at. Joe Biden has sort of campaigned on this idea that he's going to reach across the aisle and do what people before him were unable to do. I don't know how you do that with some of these folks, people who believe that he's an illegitimately elected president. It's going to be really interesting to watch over the coming months.
Well, and again, to me, the bizarre thing is that some of the Republicans who are saying the election was rigged and they're saying that they want to overturn the results, they won. They won in that very same election on the same ballots that they now argue were fraudulent. So, which is it? Okay, so then let's redo it. Okay, I mean,
right.
There was just a huge conspiracy to overturn, to fake the president's part of it and not the down ballot races. It defies logic.
It's also just politically stupid because it's like the Republicans, other than at the top of the ticket, the Republicans did really well in this election. They should be, out there pounding the pavement about what they did right. And instead, it's like it's all going into this like insane conspiracy theory stuff. It's just bad politics.
It's it's bad for democracy, whatever side of the aisle you're on. Okay, if you live in the East Coast, heads up, a major winter storm being forecast for the mid-Atlantic up through the Northeast around midweek. It's still early, but the peak looks to be Wednesday night into Thursday for the I-95 corridor from D.C. to Boston. Significant snowfall likely from Philly to New York City. Those 60 degrees temperatures, Carlo. We knew they weren't going to last.
You can never count. No. Yeah, Weather Channel this morning saying 6 inches at least for the DC to New York corridor. That's significant. That'll give us a little nice little coating. And we're getting a mini storm today in the Northeast to get us prepared. It looks like a big rain event today for most of the Northeast. I was thinking, Jill, in some ways the vaccine really coming at the worst time, right? Because these shipping companies, like the UPSs and the FedExes of the world, they have to contend with the winter weather plus the regular holiday rush, right? We are now in peak holiday shipping season. So I hope that they can handle that. I really hope that they can. But by the way, on that note, if you haven't gotten your holiday or Christmas shopping done, do it immediately. I noticed I noticed this weekend. I noticed this weekend as I was starting to finally, I'm sort of a late shopper, but I was finally starting to think about it. I noticed on some of these websites where I was shopping, they were all like, the deadlines to get shipping before Christmas have all been upped. They're basically like now this year.
It's funny. I decided to get to order a holiday card that we're going to send out, and I just did. I thought, oh well, we'll get it in 2 or 3 days, whatever. I'm not going to get it at my house. I just ordered it. It's not supposed to arrive until Christmas. And then we have to first send it out. So I was like, all right, at least the message is Happy New Year. It's not like a Happy Holidays one.
Right.
But yeah, I've noticed the same.
But guys, before we move on quickly, I just want to mention another podcast. If you like our podcast, but maybe some days you only have a few minutes to get to the news, I do want to recommend the Now This Brief from our friends over at Group 9 Media. Now This Brief is a daily news podcast that delivers the top 5 stories in under 5 minutes. So we go about 20, they go under 5. So you can wake up to the news focusing on issues that matter most to you every weekday morning, wherever you get your podcasts.
Okay, back to the news. After a week that saw 2 blockbuster IPOs, DoorDash and Airbnb, each skyrocket in their public debuts, investors are wondering whether there is something broken with the process by which banks price these IPOs. The online gaming company Roblox was planning to go public this month, but has actually decided to delay it until next year, specifically citing the debuts of DoorDash and Airbnb, saying that it's just too difficult to accurately price their shares right now.
This is a really interesting story. It may not be if you're not sort of like in the stock market world, but nevertheless, remember, if a company's shares are priced too low, the founders and the early investors and early employees, they miss out on potentially billions of dollars, right? Because that money ends up going to investors or the day traders who buy the stock in the debut. And those people may only be in the game to like make a quick buck or to hold the stock for, a few days or a few months and then trade it. So that's sort of the issue at hand. And what happened with DoorDash and Airbnb last week, as basically those companies' underwriters, those banks essentially missed the demand for shares because they priced the IPOs too low. So all of this kind of adds to this sense from what I've seen, really a growing number of people in the sort of finance world that this really, this could be a bubble similar to what we saw in 1999 or 2000. I know Jill, you and I have talked about this in the past, but I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of differences between the world then and now, right? I mean, these tech companies I think are much more part of sort of our everyday lives than they were back then when it was like Pets.com and some of those other ones.
So I asked our resident Need2Know stock expert, aka my husband. We were just chatting about these IPOs. He said that he does not understand the markets right now. He thinks that it's just not rational what's going on.
Right.
He's like, I don't even have an explanation for what's happening with the valuations for some of these companies. And Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway over on Pivot, they were saying it felt to them very much like 1999 when of course there was it was a bubble, the tech bubble that happened, and they see a lot of similar traits. We'll see, right? Then I talked to some experts on Cheddar who say, no, there's just nowhere else to put your money.
Right.
There's interest rates are record lows. The Fed is clearly going to do whatever it needs to keep things going. So I don't know. It's anyone's guess, but the point is that you've got these companies that in some cases are not even profitable that are now valued in terms of a market cap at more than legacy companies like we were talking the other day, Kraft Food, companies that really make stuff.
Right.
So I don't know what to make of it either.
You'd make a lot of money if you did. I guess that's the idea.
All right, the Cleveland. Oh, one actually really interesting thing. Do you know Medium? It's an online publishing platform.
Yeah.
Recently was Brian Chesky, the CEO of Airbnb. He wrote a couple years ago, he published 5 of the rejection letters that he first got when he was starting out and trying to get some private money for Airbnb.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And just some of the very polite letters that I guess venture capitalists sent to him just saying, I don't see the demand or whatever it is. And I think it's worth a read. I couldn't sleep last night and I was reading it and I was like, you know what? If you need inspiration to keep on going with whatever dream you have,
I like that.
I think this is it.
We could all use that. Tweet that out today. I'll retweet it.
I will. Meanwhile, the Cleveland Indians are going to change their name after 105 years. Multiple outlets reporting that the team will announce this week that it is dropping the Indians' nickname once and for all, the latest sports organization to get rid of its Native American imagery. A new name has not been decided, and Cleveland could stick with the name through the upcoming season.
I think that they should just go with the Cleveland baseball team. Remember, Washington, right? I mean, Washington. The team formerly known as the Redskins now goes by Washington Football Team. I think that they should just keep that. I sort of like how literal it is, right? Like, do you really need a mascot?
Mascots are sort of an outdated thing anyway.
Yeah, I mean, like right? I mean, the Yankees don't have one, and they're doing just fine.
Even we talk all the time about the Denver Nuggets in basketball who did well, and I just always think of like chicken nuggets or something. I know that's not what it is. It was the gold rush, and that's how the name. It's from that. But some of these names are just. They're not offensive. They're just kind of dumb.
They're just bad.
They're just bad. Meanwhile, did you see SNL and did you see my boy Bruce Springsteen?
He was, I did. I have to say, okay, so Bruce Springsteen, I had to Google this while I was watching him. He is 71 years old. He looks legitimately like 20 years younger than that. Like, what is going on with Bruce Springsteen's, skincare regimen or whatever he's up to? It's really remarkable, I have to say. Like, good for the boss.
And it's funny. So I don't know if you've ever been to a Bruce Springsteen concert. He has the energy.
Hours, right?
And it's funny. My dad's the biggest fan, and he's actually who got me into Bruce. And he used to say, if you think 2 hours is a long time, he used to go for like 4 hours back in the day. My dad said the concerts were like a religious experience. It was just crazy. But yeah, he looks great, and he sounded great. I like his new music, so that was cool.
Okay, first of all, I put this in the newsletter because I laughed so hard at it, but they did this Lexus parody commercial. Did you see that? It's so funny.
I didn't. Tell me about it.
So you know how there's like the luxury car commercials at Christmas, they do like the husband delivers the car to the wife with like the big bow on it as a surprise, and she's always so happy. So they do this parody where it's like the wife comes out and she's like, "Are you kidding me? You bought a Lexus without talking to me first? Like, this is a major family purchase." It's just so funny because I've always had that thought watching those commercials. Like, really, who buys cars for their significant other without talking that over first?
That's really funny. All right, let's do a little predictions. Last week, Carlo, we predicted who was going to be Times Person of the Year. We were both wrong. No points, right? I thought it was going to be Kamala Harris. You thought it was going to be the people behind.
No, you thought it was going to be.
I mean, Fauci. I'm sorry. I thought it was going to be Dr. Fauci. You thought it was going to be what the people behind the vaccines, and it was Kamala Harris and Joe Biden.
Wah, wah.
Okay, this week I'm just going to make kind of an easy prediction, and I'm going to say I do not think that there's going to be a stimulus deal. I think you're taking the opposing view. I think there's going to be no deal. I just think lawmakers can't get it together, and that's it.
Okay, all right, I like that because I'm taking the opposite bet there. I think that there will be a deal. I think it's going to be a little bit under $1 trillion. Pelosi said the other day that they may have to work between Christmas and New Year's, and if there's one thing you can bet on, it's that none of these people want to have to work when they could be, skiing or doing whatever it is they do. So I think that they'll get something done this week. But we shall see. Right now, the score is 3-2.5. You are still in the lead, but I could come after you this weekend.
That's some good incentive, actually, right? Get something done, or else you have to work.
One of the great incentives of life, right? Like, nobody wants to work if they don't have to work. So.
All right, that's what you need to know for Monday, December 14th.
Thanks, everybody.